Welcome to I Left the City, a show about the talented and skilled people who moved to Hastings County to find a wildly authentic life. I'm your host, Michelle Sampson. Dan Turcotte is a man who's worn many hats. Radio host, record producer, professional stunt bicycle rider. These days, Dan is the CEO of Pet Shop Productions in Toronto and TerreMX, a first-of-its-kind all-electric motocross facility in Hastings County. In this episode, Dan and I have a lively chat about how the TerreMX story started with buying a farm in Roslin, why running the business doesn't feel like work, and how his family is managing to split their lives between Toronto and Hastings County. For now, at least. So Dan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Your background there, it almost looks like you're in Hastings County, but are you in fact in Hastings County at the moment?
I wish I could say I was. No, I'm actually in Toronto. We just happen to have a nice old house that kind of looks like a country farmhouse, and I feel right at home. So
for those who are tuning in via audio, there's some beautiful beams and sort of exposed wood and some stone, so it looks very cottagey. But I guess you got that piece of the country right there in Etobicoke, which is great.
Indeed.
And we'll talk more about your living situation as we get into this interview as well. But we're going to go backwards first. Dan,
Okay.
You have a fascinating history with several chapters, in fact, that I want to dig into. But maybe we'll start with where you grew up.
Well, for the most part, I grew up in Brighton, actually. Mm-hmm. Went to school there, went to ENSS. I was a Blue Dragon. Well, actually, I wasn't really. I was an arts guy, so I never really played sports, but I was sort of a Blue Dragon. But before that, for my first few years, actually, we were just north of Port Hope. You know, when you drive by Port Hope, there's a sign that says Welcome Port Hope. Well, Welcome is actually a little village with a little corner store, and my parents actually built that corner store. So I lived there from about 2 years old to, I don't know, 7, 8 years old, and then from there moved to Brighton. So I did grow up in that area and grew up with, thousands of acres of forest in my backyard, working on farms and, delivering newspapers and picking apples. I was a country boy.
All of the really classic stuff,
Yeah,
just to rhyme them all off. So, I imagine having some open space, some trails, maybe is what planted the seed for you to eventually become a professional stunt bicycle rider. When did you first get on a bike? Do you even remember?
That was, I remember very well. I learned to ride a bike when I was 4. My older brother and his friends would go biking, and I wanted to ride so badly, and I didn't have a bike that fit me, and I would get on his bike, which was way too big. I couldn't even touch the ground, and I would ride it until I crashed. So I would ride for as long as I could. And I crashed a lot. But no, my older brother and I actually raced BMX when we were kids. I started racing and, actually won my first provincial championship race when I was 11. My brother actually was a pro. He raced BMX pro. So biking was a big part in our household. And he and I also both taught. There was Circle Square Ranch. It's a camp out north of Kingston. We both taught a BMX school out there when we were teenagers. So we were really sort of entrenched in biking. Which sort of evolved. It was all BMX when we were younger, but then it sort of evolved. And then as I got older, I took up a form of biking called Observed Trials, which is where I went pro. And that's the one, you ever seen where people will hop on one wheel? Mm-hmm. And they'll just jump up over cars and flip around and ride handrails and things. So that's what I used to do, and that's how I ended up doing stunt work. So it's all about balance and technicality and being really, really, really precise. But it's such a handy skill because you can use it on any bicycle, anything with 2 wheels. Actually, really anything with 4 wheels. It just gives you a real sense of your space and of the physics that keep you in one piece.
I don't want to spend too much time here, but as a girl who was always avoiding crashing, getting hurt, it was not the thing I wanted to do. I'm just curious about the boy willingness to just crash and be totally okay with it. Can you speak at all to the psychology of that?
For the record, I'm a big safety proponent. My wife actually says that I'm so cautious with our daughter, and I don't want her to get hurt ever. Having said that, I've broken 14 bones. I've had 6 or 7 concussions, 4, possibly 5 severed tendons. I just got an MRI in my left wrist. We're waiting to find out if it needs to be rebuilt. My ankles are titanium. Broke my back. So yeah, I've yes, it has certainly taken its toll. You don't, the thing is that if, especially if you're doing it professionally, like if you're doing a show. So, for example, my team that I used to have, we represented the 2008 Canadian Olympic bid when it happened back in 2001, 2002. So it was us with all the Olympians. But we just had to, like, there's all the gymnasts jumping off these stages and flipping, and we had to do the same thing on our bicycles beside them. And when we got to the final show, they actually cut the lights out about a quarter of a second early, and nobody could see where they were landing.
Oh, no.
So, but that's one example where, you just hit the concrete and you stand up and pretend it doesn't hurt. And then you deal with the break later. But, that's okay.
I have a feeling it might have something to do with all these injuries, but what brought this career to an end finally?
Yeah, in my early 30s, I actually broke my lower back. It's kind of hard to explain, but let's just say that I have perpetual back pain, like the worst back pain that somebody has. And yeah, I was in traction and walking with a cane for about a year and a half, and said, yeah, maybe it's time to hang this one up and move on to motorbikes because they have suspension and they're a little cushier. So that's what I did.
I thought that was going to be like, and then I completely pivoted, but you had a time where you just went to motor.
I did try golf for about 6 months, and I love golf, and I'm the worst golfer ever. And it's awesome because I love the lack of pressure of just knowing you're the worst at something. It's amazing. But yeah, I needed a little more. I had to push things a bit. And apparently you get in trouble if you ride those golf carts too fast across the green. So I was told,
Okay. So I understand that you also work in communications. So is that happening simultaneously to the professional bicycle riding, or was it okay, I'm done riding bikes and now I'm moving into communications? How'd that work?
Not to get into too long of a story, but I'll give you a short story. So a mentor of mine, unfortunately he's passed now, his name was Mark Chambers. He was the voice of the Weather Network, of Listerine, Chum. He was the Weather Network, Mark Chambers, big, very, very famous radio voice. He was a mentor of mine, and I was at a bit of a crossroads in my late 20s, and he said, and I said, I don't know what to do. Do I just go for radio, or do I try to work in a recording studio? My undergrad was in music, by the way. I'm actually a musician and a trained singer and a music composer. And he said, well, how can you use your recording studio on your bikes? And I said, I don't know. That's ridiculous. And he said, well, figure it out and let's work on it. And so what I did is I created a radio feature, a radio show called The Kick Pusher, and it was on the Team Sports Network. And this is pre-Kenny versus Spenny. This is 20 some years ago. And every week I would go around and I'd jump out of planes and race cars, and I got my scuba diving license, my skydiving license. Like I just did like every crazy thing that was on somebody's bucket list. I would do it, and then I would come back. I would interview an expert on it and break it into a series of vignettes that would air on the network throughout the week. And so my job at the time was basically as a radio host and as a stunt rider. And at the same time, we had our bicycle sports team that was doing, demos, and I was getting booked for TV commercials and things. So yeah, so I was doing both the whole time. And frankly, because I had the recording studio, I was also producing records as well, because I was a record producer. So
yeah.
So I was doing both. I don't take a lot of days off. So.
Yeah, fair enough. So, okay. So when you took a step back from cycling due to your injury, did that mean you just spent more time in your studio?
Yeah, so then I went pretty much full time into music composition and voice directing. So I was scoring a lot of music for TV shows and films. That's the real reason that I moved to Toronto in my early 20s. Is it's a little hard. It's not anymore, but back then it was very hard to do that kind of work in a town of 2,500 people. So I moved to Toronto basically to be a rock and roll singer and a stunt bike rider, and ended up scoring TV shows and directing commercials, like a lot of radio commercials. So I did car commercials and, whoever, Toyota and Canadian Tire. And I was the voice of Ashley Madison. You probably don't know who that is.
I do.
Life short, have an affair. AshleyMadison.com. Yeah, that was me.
Amazing.
So yes, probably don't want to admit that out loud. I don't know. You can cut that if you want. So I focused more on the studio, and I did a lot of voice directing for radio commercials and a lot of interviews. And then from there, I sort of worked my way into directing video. That's where my company evolved to. So
okay, and you want to give a shout out to your company?
Sure. Yeah, Pet Shop Productions. We do. Your pet project is our pet project. That's the idea behind it. The majority of what we do is actually financial literacy content for banks. So we take really complicated I know it's so far away from where we started, but I'm not always the crispiest chip in the bag. I landed on my head a lot, and I got really good at simplifying things. So what we do is we take complex financial ideas and we simplify them so that people know how to manage their money better. And, we did like ING Direct, Tangerine, RBC, a lot of banks like that. We sort of help them make content that helps educate people so they can do better with their money. And we did the same with politics too. I've worked with several political parties, taking complex political ideas like electoral reform, proportional representation and stuff like that, strategic voting, all that kind of stuff. And we talk about it very simply and create content so people understand it.
I love that. You never know where you're going to find a niche. You never know how your unique set of experiences and skills are going to come together and, be marketable, right? And, so I love all of this story. Okay, so next chapter in Dan's life. You are now also the CEO of TerreMX, which is located in Roslin in Tynedega Township. That's sort of the meat of where we want to go with this episode. So tell me everything about TerreMX's origin story. Particularly, maybe let's start with where the idea came from, and also what made you kind of pull the trigger on turning a passion into a business.
Sure. The really short version is midlife crisis. It's like, man, I'm getting older, and I'm still the same person I was when I was 20. I just want to sing rock and roll and ride bikes. That's so I thought, how do I do that? COVID was really, really difficult in the media industry. It just broke a lot of companies. It nearly broke me. I was very lucky to have some clients. We created some remote rigs and stuff, but COVID was tough. So. And my wife's a physician. She's a family doctor, OB, and a medical professor. So when COVID hit, she was literally teaching first-year med students how to go out and do emergency vaccine clinics. She's working 7 days a week. We have a 1-year-old at the time. She's saving lives. I'm selling people stuff. So, she needs to keep working, and I'm staying home with our daughter. So here we are. We're at home. At the time, we lived in a condo. We can either stay in the small condo, or I can take our daughter out to our farm where we have all this space. And weirdly enough, my daughter would only nap when she was in her baby Bjorn, those little things. So she would bump around on my chest, and I thought, well, I'm going to build some new trails. And I hopped on my excavator. I'm like, I don't know what's happening with the world with COVID. And I just started building kilometers of beautiful trail through the forest. And then it was like, okay, now I need to do something with this. At the time, I was doing some consulting work and stuff with the Green Party, and I was talking to them about really interesting economic opportunities that are eco-friendly, that are carbon neutral, but like really interesting stuff. Like there are new ways to build our economy, and I kind of felt like that fell on deaf ears a little bit. So I thought, well, I'll show them. So I started researching electric motorcycles, and next thing you know, I came up with this idea. I'm like, wow, literally nobody in North America had done it. So I opened the first all-electric motocross facility. I had a beautiful track. I put together the manufacturers. Because of my time in the biking industry, I happen to know people who provide safety equipment and who have worked in the industry for a number of years. So they knew that I was a real rider and that we could offer real instruction and that we had a real property. So we were really lucky. We got some amazing partners and sponsors like FXR. Shout out to Andy White from FXR. And so now when people come, they get to put on all the pro motocross gear from head to toe. And we opened it up. We imported these amazing electric bikes from Europe, and just made something that was really, really accessible for people. See, gas bikes, they're noisy. You have a clutch. Your hands and your feet are all doing things because you've got brakes, you've got gear shifters. With an electric bike, it's a throttle and brakes. It's very, very accessible. So anybody that can ride a bicycle can ride them, and we can turn the power down. And if somebody's being crazy or dangerous, we can just yell at them because the bikes are quiet. Right. Which is a huge, huge benefit for training. So we found like this just made it something completely new and accessible that nobody had ever done before. And funny enough, the majority of our clients have actually been moms and teenage kids. A lot of times they're like, no, I'll just let the kids do it. And then sometimes the dads will ride, and the dads are like, well, yeah, but I've ridden a bike before. I'm really, really fast. Best group I ever had were my wife's colleagues, all female doctors. And they're all like, no, this isn't for us. Our husbands would like this. And I'm like, well, that's sexist. Don't say that. Just try the bike, but listen to the instructions. And they listened to the instructions, and they're all doctors. They're all like crazy smart. they followed all the instructions to the T, and every single one of them were jumping clearing 20-foot jumps within 2 hours. They were
2
insane.
hours.
I offered one of them a spot on our race team. I'm like, you are amazing, and you can fix us all up when we crash. Like, please come along. But anyway, yeah. So TerreMX ended up becoming this really, really accessible thing. But at the same time, motocross tracks were shutting down and are shutting down all over Canada because of noise. Right? Population towns are growing, and all these properties just outside of town, they're getting shut down for noise. But with e-bikes, you can't even hear them 100 feet away. All you hear is people giggling. So
wow.
It creates a whole new world, a whole new sport, a whole new realm of accessibility. We have people, we try not to have people younger than 8, but we've had 2 people now that were almost 80. They were both in their late 70s who I couldn't get them off the bikes. They just kept riding and riding, and they loved it. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you're really opening the sport to so many more people, but then also it's got to be just such a different experience. Is it peaceful?
That is a great question because interestingly enough, so for us motorheads, like the bike that I ride, it's called the Stark Varg. It is the most powerful dirt bike ever produced. It's absolutely crazy. It has more torque than a school bus. Like it's unrideable. Like the top 50% of the power is just not even usable. However, my wife sometimes, she's like really into yoga. She loves nature. Sometimes she'll go out, she'll just turn the bike down and go for a silent ride through the woods and look at the porcupines and the wild turkeys. And the animals don't even hear you. And if they do, they turn around and see you. And it's just like somebody walking and you're just gently rolling by. So it's amazing. The only problem is I have to sweep the track before I let people ride it because sometimes there are deer that sleep on the trail. And I've almost hit a couple of deer. I actually have one video online where I was wearing a body cam and I almost hit a deer and had to stop. But yeah, it's a wonderful way to commune with nature. It's actually really, really peaceful and beautiful. Yeah.
Nice. So, tell me a little bit about your trails. So, I guess you've got some spots where, you're going to get some jumps, and if you want the adrenaline, you got that. But then you also have more gentle kind of nature ride, or how does that look?
Yeah. So the whole track is designed very, very specifically for electric bikes, and it's also designed. We put a lot of thought into the way this track is designed, and we've rebuilt it. So we have a motocross track out in the front field with all the jumps and stuff, but it's all out in the open. So if somebody's going to crash, we can see them and get to them quickly. To be honest, I did pare some of the jumps down quite a bit because what experts and pros ride with is much, much different than what a beginner is going to ride with. And most people aren't going to hit 70-foot jumps when they're learning to ride a bike. It's not
Probably
safe.
Not.
Frankly, at my age, it's not even safe. I don't even do it most of the time. So what we did is we brought most of the jumps down to sort of in that 20 to 40 foot range, which is still, that's a lot, and then what happens is we've got a turnaround so you can stay on the motocross track. So if you want to run motocross laps, you can do that. But if you want to, once you get a little more experienced and we can take our eyes off you, we let you go back into the woods. And then there are several more configurations where we can keep opening the track up, and it gets more and more advanced as it goes deeper into the woods. But it's this beautiful trail. So it's not single track, like it's not an individual track, but it's also not as wide as a full motocross track. So it's about 10 feet wide, which is enough for 2 bikes to go side by side or 1 bike if you're just hauling. But it's got all these beautiful elevation changes. We're right on the edge of the Canadian Shield, so there's these beautiful like limestone and pink granite boulders everywhere, and it's you go from like a cedar forest with like green moss on pink granite. It's like being in Lord of the Rings to like a sugar maple forest, which is stunning in the fall. Like riding there in the fall is one of the most beautiful experiences you'll ever have. It's just we're booked solid like September into October till we close. We are like, it's good luck. It's so shockingly beautiful. So there's these beautiful elevation changes. And then if you're a more advanced rider, we've got a couple of things off to the side where you can ride, and then all of a sudden it's a straight drop 4 feet down. And if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to land on your face. But we flag those off so that beginners won't go over them accidentally. So there's something kind of for everybody. It's not a pro grade track. Like, a big pro track, you're going to have jumps that are 100 plus feet. It's like jumping houses. That's not really our target demo. Having said that, I did just put in a couple of new big jumps for these new bikes we have, where it's like one of them, it's like a 25-foot jump with about 20 feet, and then it's about another 20-foot landing. So, normally if you were learning, you'd jump each of them and it would be a really fun section. But if you're, a heavy rider, you can just hit the thing super hard and go flying through the air and land 65 feet later. So, yeah. So there's something for everybody.
So what's your vision for the future of TerreMX? What's next?
So many visions. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been self-employed my whole life, so I've got 1,000 ideas. So first of all, we have a second track in Brighton, and it's for those in the know, it's actually a bit of a famous track. It was a private club, so you could only go by invite only, and it's called Over the Hill MX. It was shut down for noise around COVID time. We want to open that back up, but it's way too advanced of a track for beginners. So now that we're working with Stark, we're hoping by next year what we'd like to do is bring in some of these super bikes that are just absolutely insanely fast. And we want to start running clinics for experts and pros and start bringing experts in, or pros in rather, from around North America, like pro racers to run clinics. But we can run them on electric bikes so that, again, you can talk while you're riding and adjust the power of the bike. So we're hoping to do that. So that's our next phase. Right now, what we really want to do is we really want to cater to the tourism community that's coming out to Bay of Quinte, to Prince Edward County. And I can't tell you how many bored teenagers there are. I've had a few families who come and they're like, can we just drop our 16-year-old off here and ride? I'm like, well, sign all the waivers. But yes, I really want to give a day of fun. There's some great golf courses in the area, like Black Bear Ridge and Trillium Woods, like amazing. They're like 8 minutes away from us. So what we want to do is we want to offer a really fun day to those communities that wouldn't have access to dirt bikes. What we're trying to do is we're trying to spread share the love of the sport so that people that don't have access to it can have access. That's really our key goal right now. So we're working hard to do that. Corporate team building events, bachelor parties. So, we're looking at doing wedding shows this year just to let people know, hey, we have something even more fun than axe throwing, like a lot more fun. Mm-hmm. And if you want to throw an axe, I'll give you a chainsaw. You can throw the chainsaw, whatever. So that's really our immediate goal. That's our first goal. And then our second goal is to open the second track. And my wife tells me that I shouldn't worry about partnering with Club Med and building 12 more all over. But, it would be nice to have an excuse to, go to Jamaica every 6 weeks too. So we'll leave that one for a few years from now.
Yeah. We'll see. You never know.
Yeah.
So your wife, she is, not just your wife and a doctor and a professor, which is already an impressive enough list. She's also TerreMX's CFO.
Yes.
Also listed on your website, I love this, as level head of the business. Very important role.
Now that you've met me, that probably makes sense. Yes.
And then your daughter is also included as a company mascot and test rider of all bikes with training wheels. Adorable.
I have to update that. She's off her training wheels now. And she's going like 15 kilometers. She's ripping it up now. Yeah. Okay,
there you go. And the TerreMX has an opening for a training wheel bike tester. If
there you go.
Anybody is interested.
There you go.
But all that to say that it sounds like this is, a family business to some degree. Does that make it feel like different? Like when you're running this business as opposed to Pet Shop Productions, does that bring something different to the table?
What a great question. Yes, it's so. It's so different from Pet Shop. For the record, I love production. I love music. I love video. But what we do, as a comms expert, I'm extremely calculated. I will pour through a ton of data, a ton of metrics. I'll make sure that we get it just right. I do try to get it just right with TerreMX, but TerreMX is a real passion. And so what it's about is when people show up, they see me standing there with a big smile on my face because I'm this happy to ride bikes every single day. It's just fun. It's so fun. And I've been told that that's kind of infectious. My whole family's like that. My wife is she's not as into biking as I am, but both her and my daughter are social butterflies. They love people. And so we just love having people down. We do have other people that work with us, but yes, the family is very heavily involved, and we all love being out there together when we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to dig into the logistics around this. At the top, we mentioned that you're in Toronto. TerreMX is in Hastings County. Tell me about how you're kind of managing that.
Yeah, it's tough. Technically, my home address is out there, and my wife's home address is here in Toronto. But we split it up. So I'm out there a big chunk of the week. So we are, as things get busy, we are apart for 2 to 3 days a week sometimes. Especially when my daughter's finishing up school. But my wife has managed to juggle her schedule a little bit so that she can work remotely on Fridays. So what'll happen is they still get a long weekend out there. But I'm in Toronto 3 days a week, so there's a day or two that we don't cross over. It's tough, and now as things get busier, I'll be curious to see how this year goes, because the only bookings that we do during the week are corporate bookings. Like if somebody wants to privately book the track, because we have to shut it down, and we have quite a few inquiries for that. So I think it's going to be a little bit tougher. I'll just have to work on my wife a little more to move out there, and my daughter's willing to chime in on that one as well. But
two against one.
The two against one. You know what? I'm very proud of my wife. She's a superstar, and what she does really helps a lot of people. And frankly, it's not easy to get to where she's gotten to. So I can understand her attachment to that. But there's lots of time. There's a lot of talk of us kind of retiring out there. I'm a few years older than her, so maybe I'll just get there before her.
Just do some earlier retirement that isn't, full retirement, because you'll be, running this business.
Exactly. But it's not work. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. Logistically speaking, it does help when my wife is there. And so I try to have her and my daughter there as much as possible. So my wife is really great at and I don't know if it's a doctor thing, but she can just look at somebody and know what size they are, what size their feet are, like how big their head is. It's just this weird, uncanny thing of just looking at somebody. So if I try to get people geared up in body armor in the morning, it takes me like an hour and a half. It takes her 35 minutes. To get everybody geared up and get them all set up, because safety equipment is the most important thing, right? And everyone's got to sign all the waivers and the paperwork and stuff like that. So that's all kind of my wife. She sort of handles all that, all the legal and financial and gets all that done. And of course, the books and all that stuff. And then I just go out and act silly for the rest of the day with them. So.
Not too bad of a deal.
Lucky for me, yeah. As I tell my wife often, only one of us can marry up. Sorry about your luck.
Okay, so you're full of visions for TerreMX. You and your daughter are actively working on your wife to get that move to Hastings County. And anything else you want to say about what's next, or any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for me is that the country has always been my home. I moved to Toronto basically when I was around 19 or 20 to pursue music. And then I bought that property out there when I was 30. But even in between, I was constantly going back and, going for hikes and bike rides in the woods. So to me, it always feels like home, even when we're splitting that time. I think if there's anything that I really want to help share, it's just that love for nature. I love dirt bikes. Don't get me wrong. The business is about dirt bikes, but it's about where you ride dirt bikes. It's just so beautiful out there on the edge of the Canadian Shield. And you're 40 minutes from Prince Edward County. You're 15 minutes from the Bay of Quinte. You're 15 minutes from like movie theaters and restaurants in Belleville. You're 12 minutes from Tweed. There's, 2 hours from Toronto, 2 hours from Ottawa. It's a really, really great location. And it's a really accessible environment for people to just come out and really, really appreciate nature. So I just hope that as we grow the business and as we unravel it, that we're sharing that love for nature. I just hope that people really catch that, because that's really the most important thing for me.
Mm-hmm. If someone came up to you thinking about, moving / opening up a business, somewhere in your vicinity, would you have any advice for them?
Yeah, starting a business in the country is very different than starting a business in the city. In the city, now, the businesses that I've been, again, I work primarily with blue chip companies, which is why we're a great team building place, by the way. But in the city, when you're dealing with multi-billion-dollar companies and it's such a concentration of population, there are certain advantages to that. There are advantages to opening out in the country too. In the country, your overhead is much, much, much lower, but cash flow can be an issue. However, with things being remote now, I would just say, really, really carefully, identify your target markets and use your strengths, use that low cost of entry, use that. And in my case, use the tourism business and the locals are so supportive because they want to come out. So be friendly. Don't be afraid to make friends. I mean, that's half the fun of it, right? So don't be afraid to do it.
I absolutely love that answer. Thank you so much, Dan. This was a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed hearing all about your life and about TerreMX.
It's my pleasure, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
That was Dan Turcotte, the CEO of TerreMX. To learn more about this all-electric motocross facility or Dan's other company, Pet Shop Productions, check out the links in the show notes. And if after hearing this episode, you're inspired to move your home and work to Hastings County, head over to investinhastings.ca to find startup and relocation advice, commercial property listings, and lots of other business resources. New episodes of I Left the City are coming soon. To make sure you don't miss them, subscribe now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, or YouTube. I Left the City is an initiative of the Hastings County Economic Development Department. It's produced by Storied Places Media and hosted by me, Michelle Sampson. Thanks for listening.